The Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
There we go. Very good afternoon to you and welcome to a busy show of The Locker Room this afternoon. We have got lots of goals and we have got Ethan joining us Ethan and Robbie joining us this afternoon on the show. Brilliant games to talk about, brilliant goals as well. And we will start them this afternoon by talking about the Hibs and Dundee game, and I believe we've got a goal at the Hibs game. We'll tell you about that in a wee minute or two. There was a big game up at Piccoglie this afternoon, and the title party has been put on ice for another 2 weeks, I think it is, for Celtic, as Yanis Hadji scored a wonderful goal in the last moment of injury time to make it Aberdeen 2, Rangers 2. Also, as well, all over sport this afternoon, we have got Women's Six Nations Italy against Scotland. That is our 3 o'clock kickoff. We'll keep you up to date in that one. And if women's football is your thing on the SWPL, we've got games on this afternoon. We've got Hibs 1, Hearts 2. That's a final score. So Hearts managed to beat Hibs maybe for the first time, actually. Glasgow City 3, Motherwell 0, half-time score. Rangers big game today. Rangers against Celtic, 4:10 kickoff for that one. And then we've got Aberdeen 2, Spartans 4. Final, that's the final score as well. Get your comments coming in and we will dive right into the football. Before we speak about that brilliant game of football up at Piccoglie between Aberdeen and Rangers, let's head over to Robbie because he's been watching the Hibs Dundee game. He can give you the team news, but also he can tell you who's winning.
Yeah, so right now Hibs are 1-0 up through Rocky Bashiri. A very nice goal. It came from a Martin Boyle corner. Really nice work for Bashiri in the box, a good finish. But in terms of the team sheets, David Gray's gone unchanged. It's Smith and goals, the back three, Miller, Bashiri, Iredale, Chris Cadden on the right wing back, and O'Beaton left wing back, Troyante, Levitt and Hoylett making the midfield, and your front two is Boyle and Kukarevic. For Dundee, I believe Tony Docherty's also gone unchanged, so it's Carson and goals, back four, McGee, Shaughnessy, Robertson and Larketch, Mulligan, Celia and Robertson in the midfield, and Adewemi on the right, Tiffany on the left, and Simon Murray through the middle.
So that's the team news, and then just before we come on air, Robbie, Hibs are 1-1 now.
Yeah, again, a really nice finish for Rocky Bashiri. Good work off their corner. It was a great ball in for Martin Boyle, and I've got to say, after the first sort of 20 minutes, I thought Hibs deserved the lead. They've been really calm in possession, trying to break Dundee down. Dundee, credit to them, they've defended well in most parts, but Hibs have got the breakthrough.
Ethan, how are you?
Good. How's yourselves?
Yeah. I'm very good. This is an interesting game, this one, because it's obviously it's two teams fighting at opposite ends of the table, looking for 3 points. Of course, Dundee, I think if they win today, am I right in saying that they jump out the bottom two? They're still in the relegation fight, and Hibs, well, they could maybe get that third spot after Aberdeen got them points today against Rangers.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe two of the most, I know Dundee are down the bottom of the league, but with their recent performances have been pretty good. Even the game they lost to Rangers, they were pretty good. They obviously won the derby, and then they won last week as well against Robbie St Mirren. So I think Dundee are in good form. So I don't think they'll make it too easy for Hibs, but Hibs are obviously the most on-form team in the country at the moment. What is it, 16 games unbeaten, this to make it 17 in league action. I'm just watching the game. Hibs nearly got a second there. But no, yeah, I think it's remarkable what David Gray's done. The turnaround at Hibs. I've fancied them for a while for third. I just think they've got a little bit more in the tank than Aberdeen and Dundee United, who are both fighting well. Aberdeen unlucky today to lose out with that last minute brilliant goal from Yanis Hadji.
Yeah, sorry, Michael, just to say, if Dundee was to come back and win the day, they would go above Kilmarnock and Ross County, pushing Ross County into 11th and Kilmarnock into 10th. So it could potentially be a big afternoon. I
was just going to say, Robbie, from a Dundee point of view, obviously we spoke about Tony Docherty, it's doing a very good job up at Dundee, kind of like last season, and obviously Dundee fans will be hoping that they'll be still up at the end of the season. But it's funny how football works, because Tony Docherty, maybe you would get nominated him for Manager of the Year last season. What a brilliant job, because obviously from the kind of like step up from coach to manager, but he took it from like a duck to water, as you say. But I don't know what happened this season. The wheels just came off the bus a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a harder league this time round. I didn't think, after last season, Hibs and Aberdeen in particular having really bad seasons, I didn't think it was going to happen again. Obviously, at the start of the season, it looked like it was going to go that way. Well, obviously, no Aberdeen, but Hibs and Hearts in particular, I thought, you're looking at them going, they're probably going to have really bad seasons. But both teams have turned it around their own ways, I suppose. But look, Dundee have they've struggled in some of these games, They've shown up in the derbies, and look, Michael, we were speaking off air that fans in this country, particularly in the Edinburgh derby and the Old Firm, they only care about what happens in their games, sort of. They look at every season and go, right, we need to win these games against our rivals. So I think it's the same with the Dundee derby. I think they've looked at that and gone, right, we need to win against our rivals every time we play them this season. And to be fair to them, they've done very well. So I think Dundee fans will be maybe a bit concerned, because they're going into play a last 5 games where, let's be honest, it's not going to be easy. There's every team's in there scrapping to try and stay up. So I think at the same time they'll be a bit worried, but they have the quality. Look, Dundee have more than enough quality to stay in this league. They've got some really good players. Simon Murray is obviously one that's on everybody's lips right now. So I think Dundee will be positive, but every team down there will have that slight worry.
Good afternoon to Reagan. He's not on the show today, but he's watching the show, committed to the show, or season ticket holder and all that. Hopefully you're watching it on YouTube. And Reagan says, is it a St Mirren special? Because obviously Anna Lino says, good afternoon, chaps. Delighted that the buddies made the top 6 yesterday. Yeah, but we'll get on to that. And don't worry, Ethan, I've checked before we came on there. Robbie is sober for the show today, because I thought he was out celebrating last night, but he did say he was out, but he sobered up about 3:15 this afternoon, so that's good. So we'll keep you up to date about the Hibs Dundee game, 1-0 to Hibs. Let's go back to 12 o'clock to you guys and speak about a brilliant game. You would say a game of 2 halves. You would say final score Aberdeen 2, Rangers 2, and it looked as though it was Celtic's title. Ethan was out Celtic kicking the ball, but Yanis Hadji scored a magnificent goal, and as I said, I think it was 94 minutes as well. So from an Aberdeen point of view, obviously we'll deep dive into the game, but from an Aberdeen point of view, do you feel as though that was a defeat for Aberdeen, because obviously they lost that last minute goal as well, and also Aberdeen were the better team for large parts of that game.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Tulane, the players and the fans will be vastly disappointed. I think, as you said, they were the better team for most of the game. They created most of the chances. They didn't take all their chances. And I think to be 2-0 up, a man up, you're looking to see that game out. And I think Aberdeen, you would have given them a chance of getting something, even if Rangers started their strongest 11, because, as we know, Rangers haven't been the best domestically this season. But I think everyone probably knew that Barry Ferguson was going to make some changes, maybe not 9 that he did. And it was a bit, some players seemed to be playing in sort of positions we've not really seen them in. I think McCausland, one especially, obviously he gets caught out with the 2 yellows and a deserving red card. And that puts Rangers in a difficult position. But like they always seem to do under Barry Ferguson, go 2 goals behind and then come back. I think there's a ridiculous stat about how many of the games that they've went 2-0 behind and managed to get results. So yeah, they've obviously got a bit of character and resilience, but the first half performance would be worrying. For most of the game performance would be worrying because it was 2 bits of magic, you could say, from players. Igamani doesn't really have any right to score. He's up himself with 3 defenders around him. He manages to get a yard and it's a great finish. And then Yanis Hadji's finish is even better. So just 2 moments of magic undone Aberdeen. And I feel a bit hard done by. But if you don't take your chances when on top against a team like Rangers, then there's always a chance that will happen. And it did. So yeah, I think they'll see it as definitely 2 points dropped.
Robbie, we were talking before we came on air about if you were a Rangers fan looking at that team sheet. Obviously, Barry Ferguson told us on Friday that there was going to be changes, but never 9 changes as well. And that's always a kind of like dilemma, especially when you're going away to one of your biggest rivals in the league. And especially up to Aberdeen, because obviously Aberdeen hates Rangers. Rangers fans hate Aberdeen. That's the way it's always going to be. Going back to the 80s, maybe before then as well. But and I know that Rangers, well, most Rangers fans, apart from Chris Boyd, kind of saying, "Oh, the league's over." But when you're going away and making that amount of changes, you're asking for trouble. Maybe 1 or 2 changes, but not 9.
Aye, I mean, look, me and Reagan, though, to be fair, I was on the show on Thursday, we sort of looked at the Rangers bench after the Bilbao game and sort of, pinpointed every player that we thought would start on Sunday. So, look, I don't think I'm surprised on who started. I think people like Fernandez and Ciala, Finlay, Curtis, I think, we said they maybe will start, especially after what Ferguson said after the game. But again, as you said, to have 9 changes, it's always dangerous, especially going away to Pittodrie. But a player like Finlay Curtis, and I don't think, to be honest, I think someone like Ross McCausland, I don't think he had the best game, to be honest. But somebody like Finlay Curtis actually impressed me, to be honest. I agree with what Ethan said. I don't think the performance was good enough in the first half. But to me, some of the players that they like Finlay Curtis have shown much more passion than any first team Rangers player has over the last few weeks domestically. It showed like he wanted it a bit more. Although, whether he was good enough in the game, I know that's a different question. But to me, some of the players actually looked like they wanted to fight a bit more. So I think, although, Rangers, of course, they'll be disappointed they didn't win, they can maybe look at someone like Finlay Curtis and go, well, that's the future of our club. That's somebody that knows what it's like to play with Rangers and wants to be up for every game. So I think Rangers, they can take positives that, again, they've come back. I know what Ethan said, the stat's absolutely mental about how many times Rangers seem to come back. But I think they'll be able to take some sort of positives out of some of the players in that game. Again, they can also take negatives. I think there was players that had really poor performances. So it'll be a bit 50-50 for Rangers fans.
Yeah, I think Finlay Curtis, I was going to say that actually. I thought he was pretty impressive. The run, especially for the goal that never was, where he just, you can't really tell from the angles whether they did keep it in or not. It was like the Alistair Johnston one at Easter Road, but this time they stuck with their decision, which was what they should have done the last time, which is at least progress in some terms with VAR, but I think we're still way off where we want to be, obviously. But yeah, I think Finlay Curtis was one of the bright sparks for Rangers. But yeah, I don't think Rangers really will care too much about the drop points here, because as the league is, I know it's not mathematically over, but it is over, and they've got their eyes obviously on that massive game in Bilbao on Thursday. And also, I think the celebrations at the end are probably a wee bit of that. That they are able to stop Aberdeen's run for third. Obviously, Michael, you said about how each fans hate each other, so they would have loved just to sort of, and it will feel like a win for Rangers. I mean, coming from 2 goals behind with a man down is not very easy, especially against a place like Pittodrie. So, yeah, a better point for Rangers than it is for Aberdeen, certainly.
Yeah, and the last thing Rangers players and manager, Barry in particular, being a Rangers man would have wanted is, them being the reason Celtic confirmed the league. They'd want to do it until Celtic did themselves. So I suppose the celebrations were, a mixture of all their points.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you look back at the beginning of the game, Robbie, I mean, Aberdeen scattered well. I mean, and you can have sensed that it was only a matter of time that Aberdeen was going to take the league. I mean, like Morrison had a good. First of all, what a touch that he had, and the chance that he missed, and Keskinen's chance as well. That's only like 2 of the chances Aberdeen had before they scored that wonderful goal by Leighton Clarkson. But I mean, you could actually sense that Aberdeen scattered the game in the front foot.
Yeah, each game that comes, I think I'm getting more and more impressed with Shayden Morris. He's a very, very good player. He's very quick. He can take a good touch. He can create chances. It's what he done, before, as you said, Aberdeen did score the first. Keskinen on the other side, I thought he had a brilliant game as well. I thought, as a Palavera in the midfield, I thought he was strong as well. Yeah. So there was a few Aberdeen players that really impressed me, but that Shayden Morris one, I'm surprised they didn't score. I don't know if he was trying to look for the player that was making the run into the box at the time. I think it was Papagay who made the run. I don't know if he was maybe looking for him at the time, but he's got to just strike that, and I think it goes in. Not to jump into a goal too early, but Reagan did say what would happen if you put Liam Kelly in for this game and he makes a bit of an error. And to be honest, I think he did for the goal. But again, Aberdeen, there was a lot of players today that impressed me.
Yeah, I think, as you said, I think both wingers, Keskinen and Morris, were really good. I've always since this season, especially. I think Shane Morris has been a sort of constant for Aberdeen. He's always providing something. Usually, most of the time off the bench, but they obviously had that brilliant goal at Dingwall last week, and then could have been another moment of magic because it was a brilliant first touch and turn. He just drags it wide, unfortunately. But yeah, I think Aberdeen did have quality and they created lots of chances. Nisbet, I don't know how he didn't score. He thought he did score, obviously, to seal the 3 points, but obviously it got ruled out. But yeah, I think, as you said, as Robbie said about Kelly, I think he should be doing better with that free kick. I think, of course, he's maybe not expecting it, Clarkson to shoot, but I think he's got to get over there and keep it out. But yeah, I think Aberdeen, I think they'll be in the race for third, but I think they'll just miss out to Hibs. I think Aberdeen, they seem to be on a good run at the moment, but I think Hibs will have too much.
From an Aberdeen point of view, well, I suppose from a Rangers point of view, both teams went into the game with a kind of weird season, you would say, Robbie. I mean, Rangers has been out of the league since maybe before Christmas or into the new year, call it what you will, maybe November. A lot of Celtic fans will say as well. And Aberdeen were consistent, and then what was it, 13 games unbeaten, and then they went to Hampden Park and Celtic wiped them aside in the League Cup semi-final, and they never, well, they've kind of recovered now, but it took them ages to get the bandwagon back up to speed. But it was a weird season going into this game for both of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, Rangers will have a season that they never want to have again. Not just in the league, obviously being this far behind Celtic, but in the cups as well. Losing it at Queen's Park's always the one that everybody's going to talk about. Rangers will never want to have a result like that again, because it was all we heard about for weeks. It's the history maker. It's the one that, it's the embarrassing result for Rangers in Europe. They've surprisingly done well, which I don't think many people would have thought after some of their performances in the league, but they have done well in Europe to get to where they are now. But then you go back into the league, you're losing twice to St Mirren in a history season for us, gone to Ibrox and actually been able to get a win. You've lost at home to Motherwell. You've not won at home since February. So all these things make it a season for Rangers that they'll want to forget. But for Aberdeen, they've still got a chance to make it a really good season. They're in the race for third. I know the third, the ups have been on that large unbeaten run, but then they were on a large losing run as well. But look, they're still in with a chance at third. I agree with you, even though I do think Hibs will get it. But they also have a chance to go and win a cup. They're still in there to win it. So Aberdeen, I think, are having a weirder season. They've been so up or down. They've managed to keep themselves in the top six, but they've still got a chance to go and do things. That if they finish third and win the cup this season, it'll be a magical season for Tulane. And any talk about him getting sacked, which there was, by the way, a few weeks ago, I remember a few comments on the show that people, were maybe having a wee look at him losing his job. If he was to win the cup and finish third, all talks of that would be cleared, because he'd instantly become a magical manager for Aberdeen. It's the last few seasons in particular, it's not been great. They've been through manager faults. So for Tulane to come in and potentially finish third and get a cup, it'd be a really good season.
Yeah, it would be a great season. I think Aberdeen fans will be happy with. I think most of them will be happy with European football, and I think they will get that. Whether it's third, fourth, or fifth, I think we're yet to see. I don't think St Mirren will be able to catch up. I think the gap to the other teams is too big, 9 points. But I think they can definitely go into the Hearts game with confidence in the semi-final, and if they win that, they can definitely go into the final with confidence. If it is St Johnstone or Celtic they play in the final, if they were to make it. But I think they'll look at it as a good season overall, because the last few seasons have obviously been pretty difficult. And Jimmy Tilly, you can see what he's trying to do. I know they had that awful run, but it's strange because between Aberdeen, Dundee United and Hibs, they're all on very similar point tallies, but they've all got to them in very different ways. Aberdeen started the season brilliantly, had a massive fall off. Hibs started the season terribly, and now having that run, maybe not as good, quite as good as Aberdeen at the start of the season, but near enough. And then Dundee United have kind of just been a constant under Jim Goodwin. So it'll be really interesting. I think that's obviously the main interesting point about the top six. Who's going to get that third place? Because is it still automatic Conference League?
Yeah, I think so for one more season, yeah.
Yeah, so that's obviously financially very beneficial, and hopefully this time we can go one step further and make it to one of those next rounds. Because I mean, you look at some of the teams that are starting the Conference League. You've got teams from the middle of the Polish league, so it's definitely capable for these type of clubs to go into that tournament and make a name for themselves.
Shamrock Rovers is a really good example. A team that's, they're in the Irish League, and I know they're 3-0 down to Chelsea after the first leg, but they're there, they're in the knockout. So it should be a statement for our teams that we should be able to go and do that as well.
Robbie, I was just going to say to you, as Rangers got a kind of discipline issue, because I was watching that game and Ross McCausland gets sent off to get a few wee niggles during the game. But I mean, if you look at the Rangers team, guys, you would say out of the Rangers team, Ross McCausland is one of the kind of like senior players in that team, and they get sent off. Is that an issue at the moment as well? Because I know Barry Ferguson is very passionate. Everybody knows he's a Rangers fan, and I'm sure was it first night that he got a yellow card, and then obviously Neil McCann get a booking today as well. So do you think it's? I mean, it's good to show passion on and off the field, but do you think there's a white line that you can cross?
Well, I mean, look, on the Ross McCausland red card, well, obviously double yellow. I think it was a double yellow. To be fair, I think on the first yellow, I don't think that was just on that one challenge alone. I think it was, the build-up of fouls that he, committed beforehand, which got him the deserved yellow. And then the second one, like, I always feel bad with the type of tackles because you can see he's maybe about this much after getting the ball, and it just evades away from him and it catches the player's legs, which, as a second yellow card. But it's just one of them where it's really unlucky. But I mean, you're right, like, on the touchline, there's ways to go about, being that sort of character on the touchline. If you're Neil McCann or Barry Ferguson, you can be a passionate manager. I see it at my club, Celtic fans. I'm sure you see it with Rodgers sometimes. I think all managers are really charismatic on the touchline sometimes, but I feel like Rangers maybe go about it in the wrong way if you're Ferguson or McCann. I think especially McCann, it's not often you see, anybody other than the manager really get booked on the touchline, but you can see they're all passionate guys. I suppose Rangers fans will probably like that, they're so passionate on the touchline, they like to get involved. But again, you can't do it too many times, so maybe as a learning curve for the Rangers backroom stuff.
Yeah, and I think, what was it? Did Neil McCann, he get booked today, didn't he? Yeah. I think I think the Rangers backroom staff do like to kind of get up and stand up next to Barry Ferguson, which I don't think is always allowed. There was an interesting, I don't know if any of you've seen it, for the English Premier League, and it was the percentage of time spent in each area of the dugout and bench by the Premier League managers. I just thought it was really interesting because it showed you if they were at the left side of the dugout most, right side of the dugout, sitting on the bench, beyond the technical area and on the touchline and stuff like that. And people were picking up that Mikel Arteta was on the touchline more than anything else. But I think they do like to get involved, all of them. And yeah, it can. But I think for McCausland, I think it was just that he got caught out. He was just not He's not a great defensive player, and he just gets caught out against Keskinen on his side. It would have been. So yeah, I think it was 2 deserved yellows. And I think that Ross McCausland wing-back experiment is done. I don't think we'll see that again. Whereas, as we said, I think Cutter's definitely done himself no harm.
The only other surprising from the Rangers game is Proper. I was actually quite surprised to see him, Robbie, because obviously he gets sent off in midweek as well. And also, I think in the first half, I think he gave a corner away early on in the game. But was that a kind of, well, why did you put him in the Barry today? Because you knew that he was out for first night. Surely you would go with somebody who's able to play in that game.
But to be honest with you, I sort of played devil's advocate in that and say that's maybe why he's played him. He's maybe looked at Thursday and gone, right, because let's be honest, every Rangers defender bar, Souters, that they're getting on a bit. That's maybe going to play on Thursday. You look at somebody like Leon Balogun that could potentially feature. He's not exactly young, so if you play him in this game and his legs get tired, then you're going to need to rotate him out on Thursday. But you look at somebody like Proper, who's, I suppose not going to play on Thursday, and you go, right, well, there's no harm in putting you in because you can run for the whole 90 minutes and you're not going to play on Thursday. So I suppose, there's two arguments to it. I think some Rangers fans maybe wouldn't mind them starting for that reason, but I suppose some would go, why, playing somebody that is going to play on Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's definitely both interesting points that both you make. I don't think Robin Proper's a great central defender. I think if Rangers are looking to challenge on a league front and go as far as they possibly can in Europe, I think they need someone better in that area. I think John Souttar's one of the best defenders in the league, and probably Scotland's best central defender. But I think beyond that, there's not much. There's nobody sort of grabbing that position. And I think if Souttar was back on the bench today, was he? So I think he'll be in the back three. Proper obviously won't. Sterling, I think he's out for the season, I think. So I don't think he's obviously not going to be there. So it's going to be your likes of probably, let me think,
Do you think he maybe moves Tavernier into centre back?
Yeah, possibly, but I just don't see who could play it right wing back. It's a difficult one. It's really. He said after the game that he's waiting back to hear good news on a few players, but I don't know if any of them are central defender options. So I think it might be Nsiala we see, and obviously Fernandez went off as well. So yeah, he's quite short in that area at the moment. Ferguson, and he might even change to a back four maybe. Although they've had so much success with a back five that you'd imagine he'd try and stick with that at all costs.
I thought the back four. Sorry, Mike. I was just going to say. I thought when Rangers switched to the back four, they actually looked a lot more composed. I think it was Crocker that said it on commentary. I thought Rangers looked a lot more dominant and comfortable when they switched to the back four. So maybe that's something that Ferguson will keep an eye on for Thursday.
And I actually forgot when I was talking about Rangers discipline, and Ethan reminded me as well. So I was involved in, I think, I kind of fight after the game with was it Anglo Shinny, and Barry Ferguson kind of like got involved as well. I don't know if you guys saw that after the game, and that's not what you want to see, especially when I was talking to Robbie about discipline as well, and you've got Harding point away to one of your rivals and you're scattered, kind of like throwing maybe handbags after the game. It's horrible. It's terrible to see. Second half, Robbie, Rangers got off to a brilliant start. Agamani, I mean, when you see that goal, it make it look easy, that goal, but he had a lot of work to do, and that was 2-1 at the time.
I think Aberdeen defensively will be disappointed with that. They really should have stopped him. But look, it was a great knock-on for, again, Finlay Curtis. As we spoke about, he made an impact in that game. It's a really good knock-on. Agamani, as you said, he still has a lot of work to do. But it makes it look so easy. And, every Rangers fan should be questioning Barry Ferguson, going, why are we not seeing this guy more? We'll go to speak about, obviously, Desser's coming on late in the game, missing that chance obviously at the end. But to me, I look at Igaman and I go, he should be playing every chance he can. For me, that's a guy that picks up the ball. He's not scared to take people on, and he knows how to finish a chance. A really, really well worked goal. But again, Aberdeen will probably be really disappointed. They never defended it better.
And then Ethan, after that goal, Aberdeen had to warm the storm for a wee bit, because Rangers were coming back into the game. They kind of sensed that all 3 points was there, and then for some reason, it kind of takes me back to Jim Goodwin's time up at Aberdeen, Robbie's pal, where I think he took over about 3 players that night, and Rangers got a point. I don't know if you guys remember that a few seasons ago, and Jimmy Carling done the same as well. He took off Posalis, I think he took off Nisbet and Gay as well. And I mean,
I think he took off Keskinen and Gay, possibly.
Yeah, he took off Keskinen. I think it was Keskinen for Devlin at the time.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of that, guys? Because in hindsight, we could be still sitting here and, the guys would get finished the game, and the game would get finished 2-each, or Rangers would get won that game. But what do you make of that decision? Because I could see maybe why he took him off at 3-1, but 2-1's a bit of a kind of iffy score.
Yeah, definitely. I think the substitutions were to sort of, what would you say, hold on to the game rather than attack it and get another goal. But before, Aberdeen still had most of the chances. I remember Nisbet flashing one past the post, and then he obviously had his goal as well. So I think the substitutions were, I don't know, maybe he made too many at once, because in the space of 5 minutes, looking at it, he's made 4 substitutions, which is quite a lot. especially when you're winning the game. I know Agamani scored that goal, but it was out of nothing really. And yeah, maybe that was something that Jimmy Tolino looked back on as an error he made, because ultimately Rangers do get that equalising goal.
Or
Which
do you think that he had the semi-final in mind as well, Ethan?
possibly, but I think, yeah, possibly, yeah, that's definitely a good point I didn't think of, because I think that's a bigger game than this one. I know Rangers is obviously Aberdeen's rivals. They want to beat Rangers. They want to get results against Rangers, and they've obviously got aspirations of third place as well. But to get to the opportunity to get a cup final against Hearts and Neil Critchley, who's been accused of not winning the so-called big games against the likes of Hibs, Celtic, Rangers, and Aberdeen, then Aberdeen will be probably favourites for that one. But the same for Hearts, it's their biggest game of the season, because they're not got any more games against the big clubs, because they're obviously in the bottom six, which the fans weren't very happy about, but I'm sure we'll get on to that.
Yeah, I think by the sub, the one that I think baffled me a bit was taking off. I think it was Palversa Fadoli Daba, which I looked at and went, that's gone a bit more attacking. Daba is an attacking player, which fair enough, if you want to go and try and kill the game off, that's fair. But maybe put on somebody like Jack Milne to, calm the game down a bit. I felt Aberdeen were maybe running out of legs at the back line, particularly, with the storm that Rangers were flinging at them. So I maybe looked at that and went, maybe that's the substitution that Tolino look at and go, that maybe killed the game for us. I didn't think there was a need for Daba. I think if you're looking ahead to the semi-final next week, you maybe want to keep him as fit as possible. So, because, he is second trouble team. So I think maybe that's the sub that maybe killed the game for Aberdeen.
Yeah, I think the strange thing is, I don't know if you think this with Aberdeen strikers, I think they're all quite similar players. They're not really like, if you think Daba, Sockler and Nisbet, they're all quite similar in stature, and they're all quite similar, got a same style of play, where maybe ideally you would want a wee bit of a variation, because I've seen them. I think they might have done it against, who was it? It was one of the recent games. Aberdeen, they were needing a goal, and they just threw on all the strikers. And I don't know. I think sometimes it's not the way I go about it. And I think, okay, maybe Keskinen, you paid £1 million for him. You want him fit for you paid nearly £1 million for him. You want him fit for the semi final. But yeah, I thought that was a little bit strange as well. But yeah, Aberdeen will be unhappy because the 3 points were definitely there, and the chances to extend their lead were definitely there as well.
Yeah, I think that. Sorry, Mike, but I think that's an interesting point. I look at a club like us, and I think we have the perfect balance. We've got Oseni and Olasanya, who are your fast strikers. Then you've got Mandron Ayunga. I think if Aberdeen had a player like, I know I've seen a few clubs. Obviously, Aberdeen, I think, are sniffing at Olasanya, but I think Aberdeen would benefit from maybe like a Ronan Hale. It's a player that's quick. He takes on snapshots. I think it's something that they're missing. So I think, Ethan, you're right. I think maybe that is a slight problem that Tolino maybe need to fix getting into next season. Try and bring in a fast striker, which, for what I've read, they're already looking to do. So it's something that they've obviously identified that could be a big problem.
Before we move on, guys, it's a big week for both teams in both in our competition, one domestically and one in European action. First of all, Ethan, for Rangers on Thursday night, of course, we'll be on with the big match at 6 o'clock and then again at 10 o'clock after the game. What are you expecting, Rangers, when they go away to Bilbao?
I'm not sure. I have a sneaky, weird feeling that Rangers might just nick it. I think the sort of mental boost they'll take from going, what was it, 75 plus injury time minutes, probably about 90 minutes by the time you add on added time, with a man down, and they managed to keep Bilbao out. I know Bilbao had some great chances. They obviously had the goal chopped off, then the penalty saved by Kelly. But I think and Bilbao will be, I think, frustrated that they couldn't get that goal because playing that amount of time against 10 men, it's a golden opportunity to win a match, especially when you're the favourites going into the tie. And you know what Rangers are like in Europe. They've got this tendency to do magical things. And you look at the way they went to Fenerbahce. No one expected them to get a result. They set up with their five at the back and counter-attacked brilliantly. I could see something similar happening on Thursday, although Bilbao are a team with quality. The Williams brothers, I know they weren't great the other night, but they're some brilliant players. And they've got other players as well. So, yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a really good game. Brilliantly set up. The second leg after the first leg. And I definitely think Rangers have a chance. It's going to be difficult, but it's a European quarter-final and you never know.
From a Aberdeen point of view, Robbie, a big game this weekend is Saturday lunchtime. They take on Hearts to get to the final. A big opportunity for Aberdeen, but that's what I was saying at the top. It's been a weird old season for kind of the Aberdeen and Rangers as well. But I mean, Aberdeen, weird season, making the top six, but also getting into a second major semi-final, and they would want to go one step further this season and get into that final.
Yeah, Tillene will know how much the odds are stacked on Aberdeen to win this game. There's a theory going with Hearts, and we'll touch on them later, that they don't win big games. Well, you just need to look at that. Tillene just need to look at Hearts' last two games to know that. It's been two really, really poor results. So, he'll know, of course he'll hype up his players, but they don't need hyped up. They should know that they're getting into this on the better form. They're playing the better football, and they should be looking to go and make a final, because, as we'll touch on later, the Hearts are going through a lot of struggle right now.
Okay, let's move on. We will be back with both games. Actually, a busy week for the show. On Thursday night, Rangers, and then next weekend for the semi-finals will be on Saturday and Sunday as well. You lucky people. Okay, let's go on to Parkhead then. Ethan, the champions elect. It's only a matter of time now before they're crowned champions. They were playing Camargue yesterday. Celtic 5, Camargue 1. This was a weird game because obviously the atmosphere was a bit kind of flat because of last week's performance up at McDermott Park. But also, if that first half went on any longer, you would think Celtic would be 7-1 up at half-time. And then I don't know what happened, but I don't know if half-time got in the way, but certainly it was a different team in the second half from Celtic.
Yeah, it was strange because that seemed to happen a few weeks ago when they played Hearts. Celtic were really, really good in the first half, scored 3 goals, and then the second half was a nothing game at all. And it was a similar story here. I know there was a little bit more action in this one because I think on Sports Scene they showed about 10 seconds of the second half of the Hearts game. But yeah, Celtic done their job in the first half. But possibly a little bit of complacency creeping into the second half. And I think you could see the complacency obviously crept in last weekend with St Johnstone getting that massive win against Celtic. But some of the goals yesterday were absolutely brilliant. Real Hatate's strike was magnificent. And Calvin Carter-Vickers' strike seemed to shock everyone. You've seen some of the reaction of the players. And then Kelly get a goal back, a consolation. But yeah, it died out after that, which was, I think Kelly will probably be happy with that. But yeah, it was a bit of a nothing game for the rest of the proceedings. But a good win for Celtic, a step closer. I think they'll just hope that they get one of the games at home first, so that they can probably, because obviously you'd rather win the league at your home stadium, and I think the home games would maybe be against St Mirren or Hibs. I think possibly
Aberdeen, no.
No, I think Celtic have only
No?
played Aberdeen away once.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
would be Hibs, I think.
Yeah, so if St Mirren or Hibs are the first game, then that'll obviously be at home. But yeah, you're not sure. Well, you know for sure that it's definitely not going to be the first game's not going to be the one at Ibrox, because that just they won't allow that to happen. But yeah, as you said, the champions elect, they'll focus on the semi-final now, which is obviously a big game. And St Johnstone will take a lot of confidence into the game, considering they beat Celtic a week ago, 2 weeks before the semi-final. So it'll be more interesting than maybe people first spot, when I think a lot of people had already written St Johnstone off.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was about the Ethan yesterday. I was at the game, obviously, doing work for the show there, but I was sitting there, and I was thinking, well, I know this is weird me saying this, Rory, but Derek McInnes would be quite happy. I don't know if happy is the right word, to get out 4-1 before that fifth goal came in, because if that first half went on any longer, as I said, even it could have been 7-1 or 8-1.
I mean, I think Derek McInnes will be happy managed to get into Celtic's half. I mean, they showed the start during the game. I think it was one touch in Celtic's half after the first half an hour. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. We said on the show, Brendan Rodgers needed a reaction out of the players, and I think he got one. This was a really good performance. I mean, take your pick on best goal of the match, because there's a few to choose from. I thought, as Ethan said, Vickers' goal surprised me the most. I mean, what a hit. I don't even think he thought that was going to go in, to be honest, when he hit it. It was that good. But aye, you're right. I mean, I don't think it's hard to speak on Derek McInnes. It really is. That's 2 5-1 losses he's taking in the space of 2-3 weeks now. I mean, it's not great at all. The players just look so disconnected for anything that they're trying to do. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen such a bad defensive first 20 minutes for a team this whole season. That was really bad. Celtic just so easily carved them open. It's like they weren't even there some of the times. I just wonder, there's a lot of Kilmarnock fans now that are maybe thinking it's time for Derek McInnes. And to be honest, I don't think the Kilmarnock board will ever sack him. I think I just think they have too much trust in him now, and I think that, after what he's done in previous seasons, I don't think they'd ever do it. Could I ever see Derek walking? I don't know. But I think if things keep going the way they are, I mean, I looked in the bottom of the league and I look at even St Johnstone, I look at Dundee, I look at Ross County. To me, Kilmarnock won't beat any of them. To me, they've shown absolutely nothing to show that if they need to play these teams, that they've got enough to go and win any of them. So for Derek McInnes, it's going to be a tough last 5 games.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Kilmarnock are maybe at the moment the worst team in the league. I think St Johnstone's recent form has been not too bad for bottom of the league. Ross County struggled a little bit, but obviously Dundee are playing it now and they've been quite decent recently. But Kilmarnock have had some terrible results. The one against St Mirren especially. But yeah, as you said, I think the start about the touches in opposition half, and you see the Carter Vickers goal, how he's allowed to just drift to the edge of the Kilmarnock box, shows how deep that Kilmarnock were so early in the game. I think usually you try and start up higher and then drop and then drop and drop, but they just were back to the wall from the start. It's a worrying time for Kilmarnock fans. I think a lot of them have turned on Derek McInnes, and I think me amongst most people, I think, have kept saying, "Oh, McInnes will sort it out. McInnes will sort it out," but he hasn't done yet, and they're very much in a relegation conversation. So yeah, it's worrying times, as I said. I think we could definitely see them in the relegation playoff, maybe even automatically relegated, although St Johnstone are still quite a bit behind. So it'll be interesting to see how they season.
And they still got to play each other as well, Ethan.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As Robbie said, I think they're the worst form team at the moment, and I don't see them getting many points, which is worrying for Kilmarnock fans, the club, because if they go down, it's difficult to get back up. And the other thing is that they'll be even more worried about is playing Ayr in the playoffs, because if Ayr put them down, then I don't think they'll ever be able to live that down. So yeah, yeah.
In terms of Kilmarnock, Robbie, before we move on to Celtic, I was speaking about Dundee and Tony Dock again. They've had a weird season, and when you draw comparisons, they're basically the same, because obviously Kilmarnock maybe punched above their weight in the last season. In fact, more than punched above their weight, because they beat Celtic, was it twice, and Rangers once as well at the beginning of the season. And I mean, this season totally different now.
Yeah, I mean, look, 9th place for Kilmarnock, on paper's not a bad season. We knew Kilmarnock, Dundee and us weren't going to be, 4th, 5th and 6th again. That was never going to happen. I think teams were only going to get stronger. So look, there's no surprises that they fell into the bottom half of the table, but it's the way they've gone about it. Again, 9th isn't a bad season on paper, but if you actually look at performances on the park, that tells you everything you need to know. That's why Kilmarnock fans have, sort of lost the patience with McInnes a bit. I said it on the show last week. I think he's changed his midfield combination maybe 6 or 7 times over the past sort of 6 matches. He hasn't found that team that he's comfortable enough to stick with. He's not found that team that he's happy with. It's a bit strange, and it's a Kilmarnock team that have players that are more than capable enough, are doing well. That they've got a really good team. They've got a good base. Danny Armstrong, whether it was a cross or not, he got the goal yesterday. I think players like that, to keep him out of the team, to only bring Calvin Ramsey on again, they're paying him. I think he's the top earner just to sit on the bench. He's only on loan, so it's been a bit of a bizarre season for Kilmarnock, and I think everything that's told, I'm not really bothered on who finishes where now in the bottom 6, but from a neutral point of view, I would love nothing more than Ayr versus Kilmarnock. I think that would be really, really good to watch. So I'm kind of hoping that happens.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. I think, like you said, just to touch on some of your points, I think they've lost their identity, Kilmarnock. I think they're probably the most, I don't think any of their fans would get offended at me saying this, they're probably the most boring team to watch in the league. I mean, St Johnstone, I know they're down there. They try some points to play what we call nice football. And Dundee, the only team before today, the only 2 teams in the league that had scored more goals than Dundee were Celtic and Rangers. And Dundee have obviously conceded the most goals as well. So it's just the gung-ho style of Tony Docherty, which, if they tightened up the defence, then they'd be a lot better side, Dundee. But that makes the thrill of it. Dundee have had some great results this season against their rivals, against Celtic and Rangers, whereas Kilmarnock, it's just flat. I do worry for them. As I don't really mind who goes down. I don't have any preference on who goes down, but I think I can definitely see Kilmarnock in the mix. And I think players like Simon Murray will be ultimately the difference in the end, because I think Simon Murray's probably going to be shortlisted for Player of the Year, and possibly deservedly so. But for Kilmarnock, you get a wee bit of hope with a result last week against Motherwell, although they did play the majority of that match with a man up, but then back to reality. But to be questioned on results at Celtic Park's obviously different, so we'll have to see how they bounce back in the split.
Before we chat about Celtic and a big week for them, Ethan, going to a semi-final next weekend against the team that beat them at St Johnstone. It's going to be quite interesting, that game. Robbie, give us a wee update from Easter Road. Still 1-0 to Hibs.
Yeah, still 1-0 to Hibs. To be honest, I've not got to catch too much of the game, but Hibs seem quite comfortable, to be honest. I don't know if Dundee have threatened too much, to be honest. There's obviously been a couple of changes for both teams. Kieran Bowie's came on. I always like watching him. I always said that. I think he could be a seriously good player for Hibs. I think he's got a lot of talent. So I think it's been comfortable enough for Hibs. I think if this game finishes 1-0, they'll be happy.
Okay, let's move on to Celtic. As I say, comfortable one for Celtic. But as I was watching two different teams yesterday, saying that come out, I think they were quite happy with that, a 4-1 defeat, because they kind of parked the bus as well. It took Celtic to, 8 minutes to get Ralston's the fifth goal of the game. But now it's business turns now to the Scottish Cup semi-final next weekend, and they will want to get their own back on St Johnstone, Ethan.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the message from Brendan Rodgers, that you don't want to let any team sort of get that sort of bragging rights over you, especially if you're Celtic or Rangers. You expect to beat every team in the league, no matter who it is. And I think the players will certainly have that mentality, because the performance last week wasn't the worst, but they just didn't take any of their chances. They didn't create many clear-cut chances. I think it was just a lack of quality, really, from Celtic. It'll be interesting to see how Celtic line up, because I think there's a few players who haven't done themselves too many favours with their performances recently. But I do think Dyson Maeda's obviously a stick on to start, because he scored again yesterday. He's still on the charge for a possible 40-goal season, although it would be ambitious with how many games are left. But yeah, I think you would have to say Celtic are massive favourites for this one. Brendan Rodgers has never lost in the Scottish Cup, so that's the sort of record he holds. And just speaking of Kieran Bowie, he's just doubled Hibs' lead, 2-0. Really good finish from him as well. Yeah, I think Hibs, that's been coming really. Hibs have been the better team for most of the game. So it looks like they're going to extend their run to 17 games and retain third spot, unless Dundee make a late unexpected comeback.
Ethan, I was going to ask you as well. I was at the game yesterday myself, as I said, for the show, and you referencing the Hearts game. Then I suppose maybe you would maybe put the Rangers game into the mix as well. But I know this is weird for me to say, but do you think that because Celtic's not playing so kind of I say so well, they won the game 5-1 yesterday, but the second half they took the foot off the pedal as well. Do you think it's because they're not playing any midweek games at the moment?
Possibly. I'm not too sure what you could put it down to. I think it's maybe just the complacency of knowing that the league is all but wrapped up. And I know that's not very professional of the players, but that's the natural thing that would only creep into anyone's mind. But Celtic fans have pride the club on the players have been pleasured to wear the shirt in any game, as all clubs do. So when the standards drop below the standards they set, especially at the start of the season, I think in the first half of the season it was one of the best Celtic teams that I've seen, with just the dominance in the league, barely conceding goals. What they've done in the Champions League as well. We're pretty unlucky going out to Bayern Munich in the end, which tells the whole story of that tie. So I think the standards were always going to drop, but I think they've dropped a bit too far. They had lost one of the opening nearly 30 league matches, 25 or 27 or something like that, and then they had lost 3 of the last 6. So it kind of shows the downturn in form. But I think Celtic will win the league, obviously, and I think they'll be obviously massive favourites for the semi-final and the final, whoever they play to pick up another treble.
Ethan,
yeah.
I was just going to ask Ethan, who would your front three be? Because obviously Maeda's going to be a stick on for the game, but to me, I don't think he done I'd argue even Forrest done enough. Maybe would you make changes to that front three?
Yeah, I think none of the sort of players are really grabbing at those spots recently. They're all kind of been a bit inconsistent. I mean, Nicholas Kuhn, I think a few of people were having him down as player of the season earlier in the season, rightfully so. But Dyson Maeda obviously just went on a ridiculous run. And I think Dyson Maeda's having a brilliant season. I mean, 31, 32 goals, is it now this season? Okay, he's maybe playing striker at times now, but he did play most of the season on the wing. But I think Shota's not covered himself in the most glory. I think it's understandable he's not going to be in the first 6 months of coming back after not playing a lot of football. He's not going to be the same. He's still been productive and he's still been decent in games. But I don't think he's nailed that spot down. And I think Nicholas Kuhn, starting position, definitely up for debate. I thought James Forrest and Yang were good when they came on against St Johnstone, but I don't know if any of them have done enough. Same Adam Ida. He's maybe not scored as many goals as you would like for a £9 million signing, which I think we all maybe thought at the time was a bit too much for him, and now it's probably proven to be that. So I really don't know who'll start. I don't really have coming from a fan point of view, I don't have much of a sort of care as to who starts alongside Maeda. If it's Kuhn that starts, then okay. If it's Forrest that starts, okay. Yang, Ida. I think because I don't think any of them have been great recently. So yeah.
Am I right in saying,
what is it?
sorry, am I right in saying Yang's picked up a knock?
Possibly, because he wasn't on the bench yesterday. He wasn't in the squad even, so he might not play. I haven't seen if Rodgers has commented on that yet. I'm sure he'll comment on that closer to the match. But one thing I'd love to see is James Forrest get his goal for the season, because that would be 16 seasons scoring for Celtic, which is quite a remarkable achievement.
And also, Ethan, he's only, obviously the league's wrapped up, but if he wins the Scottish Cup, is that him free? He took over Bobby Lennox in the most decorated Celtic player.
Yeah, I think he would be, which is another ridiculous achievement. I think James Forrest has split opinion between Celtic fans for years gone by on whether he's good enough, whether his time's up, but he's been a great servant to the club. Last few seasons, he's obviously not played massive roles in it, but he's been a good sub, and he's definitely a good player to have around the squad, and he has helped Celtic over the line in the last few seasons. So he'll be hoping to do the same again.
Just to update you on a couple of things before we move on. Halftime in their old oval ball game, rugby, Scotland 7 at the 10 at halftime on that one. And as we said earlier on in the SWPL, this game's on to give final score. Hibs 1, Hearts 2, Glasgow City 4, Motherwell 0, and the big Glasgow derby is at 4:10 between Rangers. I'm sure that's on BBC, that game. Rangers against Celtic as well. Okay, let's move on. Because Robbie's desperate to speak about this next game. I don't know why. It's Motherwell 0, Hearts 0. We'll dive into that one in a minute. And we built that game up to be one of the games of the weekend, and obviously it was a damp squib. And both fans weren't happy at the end of the game because both of them didn't make the top 6. But one man who made the top 6, well, not him, because he doesn't play for St Mirren yet, I don't think. Robbie, it was St Mirren 3, Ross County 2, and I said to you before the show, it was a nervous start to the game for you guys.
It was a nervous full game, Michael. I don't think I've ever been more nervous sitting in the stadium in my life. I've just finished listening to Joy Division on repeat for about the millionth time. No, but like, I mean, in terms of the Motherwell Hearts game first, it was built up to be one of the games of the season. I think it ended up being the worst game of the season, if you ask any fans. I mean, I've spoke to a few now after the game, and they've been very clear that is maybe one of the worst games I've ever watched. It looked like a pre-season training friendly, which is never good to see. I think for both teams wanting to go for the top six. Hearts, for what I heard, Crouchley set up really, really defensive and wanted to play for the draw, which is relying on a Ross County team to come to Paisley and win, which, no disrespect to Ross County, but they're not historically known for coming to Paisley and winning, so I think that was always a bad gamble for Crouchley. In terms of us though, like, we started really bad the first 20 minutes. Ross County get the goal through Ronan Hale. It was a good save for Zach Kennan at the time, but Hale gets the rebound in. And at that point, the nerves are just through the roof. At that point, I mean, you're keeping an eye on the Motherwell Hearts game. You're getting to half time, you're getting to the 65th minute, it's still 0-0. You're going, one goal might actually sneak this. But, we just had to make sure we'd done our job. That was the most important thing in the game. We struggled. It was not easy, it was not pretty, but you've got to say 2 really nice taking goals for Boyd Munson and Adover. A younger goal was alright as well. It was a tidy finish. I don't know what the goalie was doing. I think Boyd said that I think the goalkeeper had glue on his feet for that one. But look, we got the job done. That's the most important thing. We're into the top 6. We don't need to worry about relegation. And I think that's maybe the thing I'm most pleased about. It's so easy if you're down there. And I feel for Hearts and I feel for Graham, because that's going to be really, really tight. So I'm just glad to be out of there. But Michael, last week in the show we spoke about managers of the seasons. The most underrated manager of the season by a mile is going to be Stephen Robinson. 3 consecutive seasons in the top 6 for St Mirren is unheard of. It's before the first time it happened, it's been 40 years since we were even in the top 6. To make it in 3 times after everything that's happened this season with injuries, players off the field, losing an assistant manager to Newcastle. The fact that Robinson's been able to go through all of that and still get us into the top 6 is only got to be applauded, and the players have got to be applauded as well. They've really bought into what Stephen Robinson's told them before the season started. Every player we've brought in's done their job, and we deserve to be in there. I said that if we beat Ross County and we get in there, we only deserve it, and huge credit's got to go to the players and Robinson.
I'm actually just sitting here, Robbie, and thinking about Stephen Robertson. Like we've never mentioned him in the player of the year, in the manager of the year, but yeah, he's very kind of underrated. But also as well, I'm delighted for St Mirren, not because I know Mark O'Hara and he's a good player for St Mirren and all that. But also, like Robbie, that we spoke in, what was it, November time, the news was coming out of that the man who shall not be named got St Mirren into a bit of hot water, and like the headline was about off the park and Skeg got on the park as well. So I'm delighted for him as well. But also as well, I know you were saying about Stephen Robertson, but you've got to remember that he's up against teams like Aberdeen and all that, and Sophia 10 times more of a budget than St Mirren.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say that's 3-0 Hibs now. So that's that one wrapped up. Dwight Gale off the bench, along with Kieran Bibby, who set him up. So a nice finish there, 3-0. But yeah, Stephen Robinson, he's done an absolutely brilliant job at St Mirren. Got them top 6 last season, obviously got Europe last season. I think that might be a step too far this season, but I think getting the top 6, as Robbie said, is more the benefit of having relegation hanging over your head, the possibilities of that, because it is very tight at the bottom. And I think early in the season, there was talks of whether St Mirren would be in the relegation playoff, because they were very close to it at one point when the league was so tight, and whether Stephen Robinson was the right man to take St Mirren forward. The club obviously backed him, giving him the extension. Since then, I think St Mirren have been a lot better. And then another top 6 finish. Yeah, as you said, with a budget available to him compared to some of the other teams in the league. It's a remarkable achievement. And the St Mirren players and coaching staff and the fans should be really proud of themselves, because it's a massive result yesterday. And okay, they get a bit of fortune for part that Hearts don't get the win, but yeah, a brilliant moment for St Mirren, and they can and that people like Robbie can relax for the rest of the season, knowing their position in the top flight is secured.
I mean, not even that, Robbie. I was just going to say when I was rhyming over at Stephen Robertson and the budget and all that, but you've got to remember that first time in Europe and first time beating Rangers home and away this season as well.
Yeah, it's been a history-making season for us. Obviously I know you bring up Mark O'Hara. I know what tough a year it's been for him. He's not had an easy time at all. So
Yep.
For him to be our captain again, leading us into the top six, it's good stuff to see. I think I cannot put any, I can't say any negatives. Even you're speaking about Robinson there and people doubting him. I've never doubted him since he came in. Genuinely, never once have I gone, he's not the right man to take us forward. There's been plenty of Simon fans that have. There's still people that don't fully believe he's the right man, which I find absolutely crazy. To believe people actually think that. But no, look, for me, I don't think I'm too far in saying he's the best manager I've ever had. Obviously, at the club, the obvious pick Sir Alex Ferguson. But for what people have actually achieved at St Mirren, Robinson's right up there. I think in terms of the players as well, I think this is, I think it makes it even better to know that they've clearly bought into what Robinson's telling them. Coming to a club like St Mirren, it's, Robinson's been very vocal. You're not going to get paid as much money as you would be if you went to Hearts or Aberdeen. It's not going to be as glorious, but if you can come and give your all, there's opportunities. We've had multiple players represent their countries over the seasons, moved into England. It is a really good stepping stone club this season. I still think it'll be Robinson's biggest so far. We're losing, I think, 10 players, and that's a lot of first team players, so he's got a big rebuilding job, but I'm just going to enjoy the next 6 or 7 weeks before the end of the season, knowing that we're not going to be in the relegation battle. And even I know your point, it is quite a big stretch to get Europe. What I would say is this season we've taken more points off of the top 5 teams than we have the bottom 6. So if that's anything to go by, we're in with a slim chance. We're still in with a chance though. And look, if we don't, it doesn't matter. We can look ahead to next season. I know Graham, unfortunately, I know he put the comment in there. Obviously, we'll touch on Motherwell Hearts properly. I do feel bad. I know I've been through the relegation battles with St Mirren. I've seen us in the relegation playoff. I can only imagine what a fan like Graham must be feeling like. I know they're in the semi, but they are still in for the relegation scrap. I know how nervous that can be. So to not be in that point, from my point of view, it's such a relief.
Yeah. I mean, Hearts are just 6 points ahead of Dundee. It's 4 now, Hibs now. Kieran Murray again, so off the bench for 2 goals and an assist. Nicky Cadden comes off the bench to get an assist for a brilliant cross as well. So everything going well at Hibs. Dundee, you can see why they've got the worst defensive record in the league. I think they've only kept 2 clean sheets this season, which is ridiculous when we're 33 games into it. But yeah, as I mentioned before, a great achievement for St Mirren, and a really good season as well. And they'll be hoping that they can build on it next season and go for top 6 again, because Robinson set that over the last 2 seasons as the standard, and now you just need to follow that up. It's not about getting disappointed and wanting Robinson out if you don't get top 6 next season, because we know the budgets. You mentioned it, Robbie, with the lure that other teams have for players compared to St Mirren, but they've got some really, really good players. I mean, Olasanya doesn't even start all the games, and I think he's a really, really good player on his day. So yeah, St Mirren, a good season for them, and as you said, they can relax now. But for Hearts, the only thing I think would revive this season is winning the Scottish Cup. And Critchley's going to have to get over his big game hoodoo, which some of the Hearts fans are holding against him and want him gone, because he's not performing in the big games. But I think that's Hearts being a little bit sort of entitled, because I think if if we're talking about Hearts, I think they're probably looking at what Hibs have done this season, the turnaround they had, and maybe expecting Critchley to do the same. But I mean, what Hibs have done under David Gray is remarkable. So I don't think Hearts is fair to expect that of Critchley. You get a full summer transfer window and get another run at top six next season.
Yeah,
Robbie, Graham, just before you answer that point, mate, Graham Watson, hope you're well, mate. Thanks for watching on YouTube. He said, Robbie, who has been your player of the year? And by the way, if you don't say Mark O'Hara, I won't take offence at you.
But no, I was just going to say before I answered that, actually, we were ninth in March. Just in the middle of March, we were sitting ninth in the league, 6 points behind City. So, that's only credit to the players to get us in there. As Ethan said, ninth place is an actual good season for St Mirren. I think people forget that. If we finish ninth every year, I wouldn't complain it would be away for relegation. Although a lot of fans would, and obviously there's been a lot of expectations put on us. If we finish 9th, 8th or 7th, I'm happy. I'm happy to still be in the league because I look at what St Johnstone done. St Johnstone were up there. They were winning. They won the cup double. They were playing in Europe. They had a very good season, and now they look like they're going to go down. So to not be in that position, I can only be happy. But Graham, my player of the season would be Killian Phillips. Personally, I think he's superb. I remember there was a lot of doubt when we signed him because obviously he played with Aberdeen the season beforehand, and he wasn't great, and he missed the penalty versus Celtic and all this, and people were doubting him. But that guy's a workhorse. He'll run for you, and I think looking forward to next season, we're going to have Mark O'Hara and Phillips in there in the midfield. Whether we have Boyd Muntz, that's up to him. I know we've offered him a contract, but if we can get the three of them in the midfield again, there's no doubt in my mind we can push for top six again. Absolutely no reason why we couldn't. That to me is one of the best midfields in the league. There's obviously a lot of good midfields, but to me that's perfect. That's a perfect balance of what you want. So it's a big window coming up. But look, Michael, I'm going to enjoy the last 6 weeks of the season listening to Joy Division and eating some jam tarts because I think we've deserved it.
And I was going to say smoking, but no, I forgot we were on there as well. Robert, I wanted to ask you as well, obviously you're a season ticket holder and you go to St Mirren Park week in, week out, but I've been very impressed by the St Mirren home fans as well, especially yesterday. I think it was a sellout for the game.
Yeah, I think it was just a bit of a sellout in the home end. Incredible atmosphere. I know obviously there's a lot of talk about season tickets and football and stuff like that. Next season might be the first season in I think 6 or 7 years now where I might not be able to renew just financially. I mean, obviously we can dive into that if we ever do a show on that sort of thing. But with the way it's gone, it's an expensive hobby, football. But credit to all 7,000 St Mirren fans that they make the trip into the stadium every week because I've been through the championship. I know what it was like when there was 3,000, 2,000 attendance at the games and it was quiet and there was no noise and it's horrible to go through. So to have the stadium rocking every week, it's really, really good to see.
Ethan, I mean, going back to Skilly Robertson before we touch upon Ross County, I mean, he's gonna Robbie said, and he's not been biased at all, but he did a brilliant job at Motherwell as well. But I mean, Stephen Robertson's one of these kind of like overrated managers, you would say, and not only in the Premiership, but maybe in Scottish football.
Who did you say, Stephen Robertson there?
Yeah.
What, overrated or underrated?
Underrated in terms of like, the budgets and all that.
I thought you said overrated there. No, definitely. I think manager of the season, I think would maybe be a wee bit too far. But he has been brilliant. I think if he was nominated, I don't think I would have anything against it. I think you're looking at my manager of the season thoughts would be if Celtic win the treble, I think Brendan Rodgers. I know Celtic win the treble quite often recently, but I still think it's an achievement that you can't do any better as a Celtic manager domestically. So I think that needs to be sort of respected. But if he doesn't win the treble, then I definitely think there's a case for another manager. And I think the ones that I would look at would be David Gray. I think the sort of way that he picked up Hibs and what he's took them to being I mean, you could say what I've said already, the most informed team in the league. I mean, some of the results in that run, they beat everybody in the top six. I think. No, actually, they haven't beat St Mirren, have they?
They've not beat St Mirren, and the other club with Dundee, but obviously they're going to win that game. So
yeah, and then they'll obviously get their chance against St Mirren now, but they might lose before that. But I don't see it happening. I don't see who they're going to lose to. I mean, the Celtic and Rangers will obviously still be favourites against them. But I would just have David Gray. I'd put a wee mention in for Jim Goodwin as well. I think as a newly promoted club with Dundee United, and to get them in the top six.
And European football as well, maybe.
European football. I know they could still drop out. Robbie's hoping that they collapse and there's a chance for St Mirren. But I think, I mean, to be newly promoted and into a league and do well in that league and hold your own is not easy. Like Falkirk done as well, back-to-back promotions. John McGlynn's obviously in with a shout as well. That's if Falkirk win the league, because I know they haven't done that yet, but I do think they will see it out.
Robbie, do you want to carry on talking about St Mirren? No,
we could spend the next 10 hours talking about St Mirren, but all I will say finally is it's just a massive achievement. I'm just really happy to have it done again for the third season in a row, and I just again look forward to enjoying the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, exactly. And gives a wee shout out to Mark here. Not that I'm Mark's cheerleader or anything, but yeah, he's had a few difficult weeks on the run up to the game at Ibrox as granddad sadly passed away. So, and they mentioned that in this post match interview, Robbie on St Mirren TV. So, it was a big week for Mark as well. To play Ibrox and knowing the funeral and all that was still could come up. So fair play to Mark and well done to everybody at St Mirren. Okay, so I think we've basically lost a viewer because Ethan gave David Gray the manager of the year, and I don't know if Graham's still watching after that comment. He might comment back saying something not very nice for Sunday afternoon. Like, fish. That's the only word it comes to my mind at the moment. It begins with F, Robbie. Football, maybe? I don't know. Food? I don't know. Let's move swiftly on then. Hearts, Murrow, Hearts, 0-0, Robbie. We built this game up on Friday. We're added to one of the games of the weekend. And it didn't really live up to much as well. Even the highlights probably wasn't the BBC only gave about a few minutes to this game. Nothing to write home about. And I'm sorry to say, Graham, but going by the highlights, Hearts are very, very poor.
I think both sides were poor on this one. You know, we mentioned it on Friday. It's both teams should have looked to go on it each year and go for the top six because, let's not forget, both teams had a chance. It wasn't like Motherwell didn't have a chance and they were just sort of fighting for the points. They knew that, especially with the way, listen to what Vima was saying during the game. I'll touch on that later on about Vima, but I think in terms of what he was sort of saying briefly, they players knew that Ross County were doing well in Paisley, so they knew that there was a bit more incentive to maybe go for this and they could have got it, but it just looks so flat to me. I think we've seen maybe 2-3 Hearts chances in the whole sportsing package, which is no good when they try to go for top six. Hearts have had this in their grasp 2 weeks in a row. They had to win at home against Dundee United. Jim Goodwin doing the buddies a favour there, but the new coming away here as well, they had it in their grasp. All they had to do was score a goal, and to me, it is baffling that Crouchley decided to take the approach of sitting back. And I don't believe they didn't start Shankland, did they? No, Shankland was on the bench for the beginning. That to me is another bizarre decision. A guy that he's been in form this season, and he's not hitting the targets that he's previously set. But if Shankland maybe gets a couple more chances than obviously the big one he did get, which he missed, you'd maybe back him to score in these big games. That is why he's a big player. I cannot believe, and Graham will know more than me because I know, but I think you got to watch some of it. He'll know how poor that actually was. We only watched 2 minutes worth of a sports scene package. This game, for what I've heard from Motherwell fans that were there, and Hearts fans, it is genuinely, and I don't think they're over exaggerating in saying this is maybe one of the worst games in Scottish football history. I don't think they're over exaggerating that. I think that's genuinely how bad the standard was in this game. But I cannot believe he chose to go defensive. And as Ethan mentioned earlier, there is this big theory that Crouchley doesn't know how to win a big game. And if you go back and look at when Crouchley came in to now, what big games has he actually won? What has Crouchley done? And Graham, I know, is very vocal and wanting to keep Crouchley at least until next season and give him a summer. And I think that's only fair. But how much more big games can he lose? If Hearts go to the semi-final next week and then start losing in this, the post-split to, the Dundees and Ross Counties, they could genuinely find themselves in a relegation scrap, which I know they were obviously sitting alongside Hibs down the bottom earlier in the season, but you thought they'd probably turned that around, and that's where I will give Crouchley credit. I think the January signings he has made have been effective. I think he has signed some quality players, and I also think compared to when he came in and they were sitting bottom, he has turned it around. He's done well to get them at the table. Unfortunately, that's no good enough for Hearts fans that he's not in the top 6. So I think it'll always split opinion, but he really does need to win next week. I think that is a huge pressure on Crouchley already.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he needs to get rid of his big game. Hoodoo, or he'll be gone, I think. Maybe not gone after this game. But I think Hearts, they've got the players to get a result against Aberdeen. Aberdeen will be the favourites. They've been the more on-form team. They've obviously been the better team across the distance of the season as well. But yeah, in a semi-final, anything can happen. So you never know. It'll be an interesting game, a really interesting game, because it can sort of dictate how each team's seasons will be seen. If Hearts don't make top 6, I think trophies the only thing that will sort of redeem that. But yeah, I just think they've been poor. I think they'll be okay. I don't think Hearts will go down or even be in relegation trouble, but it's not nice being in the bottom 6, especially as one of the biggest clubs in the country.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, I know Graham has put a few comments in. Thanks for watching, Graham, as well. But I just wanted to go back to this comment, guys, that he may get there on about kind of like basically was saying that yesterday no fight, no passion. Is that worthy any Hearts fans probably going into a big semi-final next week?
It'll worry every Hearts fan, and I'm sure it'll worry Crouchley as well. Look, Graham's right with his other comment. It's not just on Crouchley, and I do kind of feel bad for him because he will always take the front of the blame. But these players need to show up. They are good enough players to be in the top 6, in my opinion. There's quality in there. Although the likes of Jan Danda and Blair Spittle maybe haven't worked it this season, I do believe that they are top 6 quality players. In my opinion, anyway. I think when they're at the best, obviously Shankland was on the bench. He's more than capable enough of finding a goal. So these players, they have what it takes, whether they've shown it this season or not. It is though Crouchley's job to get the best out of them. And I know they played the Diamond again yesterday. I think Graham was very vocal that they should have gone 4-4-2. We say it on the show all the time, Michael, football's an easy game. people try and do different things and try and overcomplicate it. Football's a very simple game if you do the basics. So there's a lot of work to be done before the semi-final, because for me, more pressure's on Hearts than it is Aberdeen. If Aberdeen don't win this, they'll still, as Ethan said earlier, they'll be happy with Europe. But if Hearts lose this, there's even more pressure on Crouchley, because Hearts fans are quick to, and I suppose every fan in the country are as well. They're quick to turn on the manager if it's not working out. He's going out the door. But I think it's definitely a worry that these players aren't showing any fight.
Yeah, because sorry, I was just going to say that,
sorry.
Michael. There's 2 games that they wanted to win as well, and should have wanted to win. Dundee United and Motherwell game, because they would have secured top 6. Okay, they're still a wee bit behind the European places, but surely just the sort of urge to go and get the win to mean that you're not having to worry about relegation threat is enough. And I think that would have given them so much more. If they had got top 6, I would have given them so much more confidence going into the Aberdeen game. But I think it's difficult. It'll be difficult to pick themselves up, because it's all a bit doom and gloom at Tynecastle at the moment, and rightfully so, because the recent form hasn't been great. They've obviously missed out on top 6, which for a club like Hearts isn't acceptable. Okay, Critchley came in late, so he doesn't have the full season to sort of go off, but yeah, he's had some poor results. No wins in the derbies, no wins against Celtic and Rangers when they have been complacent and at times this season. No wins against Aberdeen as well, and of course didn't get out of the Conference League group after they looked like they had sort of wrapped that up after the first 3 games, was it?
A 96% chance they had of getting out of the group.
Yeah, ridiculous. And obviously they draw the last game against the weakest team in the competition. So yeah, it's really not great. But you never know. As Robbie said, they've got the quality. They've got the quality players there to do something. To be a top 6 club. The top 6 team, sorry, and get to a Scottish Cup final and possibly win a Scottish Cup, because that'll be the saving grace for Neil Critchley in a rather uninspiring season.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, I was just going to quickly answer Graham's question. No, I wouldn't sack Crouchley. I think Hearts fans forget the position. I feel like some Hearts fans forget the position Crouchley was in when he came into the club. They're sitting in relegation. It's not looking good. They're in a poor run of form. But we always remember the Dundee game at Dens Park. They get absolutely torn apart up there. So people need to remember what Crouchley walked into was a really poor Hearts team. At low in confidence, low in morale. They were showing no fight back then. Crouchley's installed some fight. Again, remember, gone for 12 to 6. It's no easy. They've managed to climb out of league. Yes, I know they didn't get top 6, but they're still up there. Away for that bottom spot. So that's not to be sniffed at. The January improvements Crouchley's made are. He's made some good signings. I like McCart. I like Kabangu. They're 2 players there that I think have got quality for Hearts. Saying that, theoretically, and Graham, by the way, I'm not saying this is going to happen. If Aberdeen were to beat Hearts a 4 or 5-0, if it was to get silly, I would not be surprised if Hearts sacked him. I think, if it was my decision, I wouldn't sack him. If Hearts sacked him, if they lost and they lost by a convincing margin, it wouldn't surprise me. So I think there is big pressure lying on the game next week.
I know what you're saying, Robbie, about Kabangu, and he is a decent player, but Ethan, he misses brilliant chances as well. I can remember the game against, was it Rangers at Tynecastle? Sugar had a hat-trick in that one, and I think it was a game in Perth as well when they played at St Johnstone as well. I know what Graham's saying about Critchley, but I think I can't agree with Robbie, because what more does Hearts fans want? Like they've gotten a semi-final, one step into the final if they beat Aberdeen this week, and you never know. We could be sitting here next week, Hearts fans still moaning about Hearts being in the final. What else do they need to do? They've been in Europe for the first game. Okay, they failed to qualify out the group. A big fan base at Tynecastle. The home games are always sold out. 18,000 to Tynecastle holds as well. But the other thing of it is, I was saying to Robbie before we kill on there, Ethan, about it's a bit like Celtic and Rangers, right? If you don't finish above Hibs, that's a failure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Cabango, as you said, I think he has been a good signing because he's brought goals that weren't there, but he does miss a lot of chances. And I think that's been Hearts' problem the whole season. They've not been clinical enough. If we're looking at, I don't know if you used to care too much about these type of stats, but expected goals. There's an expected goals table in front of me. Celtic and Rangers first and second, Hibs third, Hearts fourth. So by this table, Hearts should be 6 points behind Hibs and fourth, but they're obviously not. And when you take away a 30 goal a season striker and turn him into a 5 goal season striker or whatever, however many goals Shankland's got this season, that's a big goal deficit. I think that's one of the roots of the problem. And I think Hearts' recruitment in the summer wasn't great either. And I think they kind of set themselves up for failure in a way because some of the positions they didn't cover Shankland in case he did have bad season, which I don't think anyone's seen coming. But they're the type of things that you need to sort of backtrack and make sure you've got the kind of players in place. And I think Critchley, I think the one positive thing I think would say that he did have a good January window and his signings have made an impact, which would give you the sort of positive thinking that going into the summer he's got the capability to get a good squad together to go ahead and battle for third place, because I think that's what Hearts should be battling for. And I think a lot of people had them down to finish third place this season at the start of the season. So yeah, it's really disappointing for them. And I think, I don't know if Graham just touched on it there or I'm imagining things. I think they do need a clear out of a lot of their players because a lot of the squads sort of, I don't know, it's just players that I think they need to get rid of and bring in fresh faces.
Robbie, going on this point with Graham, right? I don't know if you would agree. He's like so many questions about Shankland. By the way, I did hear yesterday he was at the Rangers game on Thursday night. I don't know if you guys heard that as well. And maybe that will give you an indication. Maybe his head is basically turned. Graham goes on and say, and if he will leave, what's again, I don't think it will help. But I mean, going on that point, Graham, I don't think you would miss him after this season, because I mean, last season he was up there for the Player of the Year. This season he's nowhere near the Player of the Year. He's no anywhere mentioned about kind of like a top player. Can't even get into the Scotland squad now. But I mean, I suppose that's going to the manager as well. And me and Robbie can be here all day speaking about Stevie Clark and Ethan as well. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, right? But see, I've got a beamer bonnet, right? Because if players is at if players is at the say going to another team game and in the same league, I think that's a bit weird. That's a bit like Derek McInnes on TNT in the same league talking about Rangers. I just think maybe it's me, but I think that a bit baffling. I mean, even I know if he was in the championship, right, in the first division, like I would have no issues by that, right? But because I mean, he's in the same division with again, and the play against Rangers every week now. Maybe not, obviously, because Hearts is in the bottom six. But I mean, if I was a Hearts fan, I would be a bit annoyed about that. Okay, it's a European game, but it's still in the same league.
Yeah, I think I think it's just a lack of professionalism, really. I think that fans would be quite right to sort of be unhappy with that. I know it splits opinions, but it splits opinions between fans like Derek McInnes, the Derek McInnes example you used. I know Kilmarnock fans that aren't really bothered by it. I know Kilmarnock fans that think that it gets on their nerves. And I think him going to Rangers games, well, isn't great. I wouldn't be happy if a sort of Celtic player was going to any other team's games. So I think you can definitely make a point as to that. And I think maybe he has took his eye off the ball this season. Obviously, the big contract talks, the big talks about a move. You don't know what's going on with him off the field. But on the field, it's been a really, really poor season for him. And he'll just be thinking about what it could have been if he had went somewhere else in the summer. Maybe we could be talking about Lawrence Shankland in a whole different vein. I mean, you never know. But it's not as if he's not had the chances. I think Hearts have created enough, as the stats I read out just proved. I think he's just not been very clinical this season. I think the penalty miss and the Europa Conference League probably sums up his whole season. I can't remember what game it was, but yeah, just really, really poor from Shankland and such a fall from grace after, as you said, the player of the season. He won last season, so yeah.
To be honest, so I was actually just about to touch on that. My personal opinion, it doesn't bother me. I've seen I've seen Charles Dunn, who was contracted with us at the time at Aberdeen at Hampden with an Aberdeen top on. That it doesn't bother me. What I would say on the Shankland situation in particular is, and actually as well, Jim Goodwin, known for taking his son to Celtic games. I've seen him at Celtic Park himself a few times as well. Doesn't bother me. What I would say on the Shankland situation is it's a bit different. We know the link between Shankland and Rangers. So for Shankland, and I get it, and I know Graham, I think, said, about obviously Hearts on the plane, so it doesn't bother that much. For me, the Shankland situation is different because we know the links between Shankland and Rangers. So for me, the obvious first rumour is Shankland's gone to Rangers as soon as Shankland goes there, which, that is a different situation. I suppose it's taken differently. I think it maybe depends on who it is. To me, Charles Dunn gone to Aberdeen supporting his pal, fine. I'm not going to get mad at it. I can see why fans would get mad at it. And I just think on the Shankland situation, I can see why fans would get mad at it. But again, he's probably just there to watch football. What I would say again, my point, there's always going to be rumours that start for that. So I think Shankland maybe needs to be careful in the future if he is going to do that. And obviously, we don't know where he's going to be next season. He might not be at Hearts, it could be at Rangers, who knows. So I think it will be interesting to see where he goes in the summer.
Yeah, I think another thing that comes into kind of that I thought of when talking about this kind of stuff is if the players performing, I think, or manager, as you said about Jim Goodwin, I think if they're performing, then you kind of maybe go, well, he's given the best to our club. I don't really mind what he does with his free time. Where if Shankland's having a sort of really, really poor season, and he'll obviously be the highest earner at Hearts, he's the captain, and when he drops below the standard, below his usual standard, it probably sets the standard for the whole team. And then when you see him at Rangers matches, then yeah, it probably frustrates a lot of Hearts fans because it does look like he's sort of took his eye off the ball this season with the rumours. I haven't been linked to Rangers for seasons now. Whether that happens, we don't know. Maybe Rangers will take a unlikely punt on him, and that maybe they can bring the goals back out of him, or maybe his career will just take a downward spiral. Because I don't know if there's many. Would a lot of clubs in the league take Lawrence Shankland? I think they would still, but I don't think he would get a club the size of Hearts, because I think he's obviously an ageing player and it's been a really poor season for him.
Yeah, and as well, just on that point, you know, if Shankland was playing well, nobody would care. But as well, you know, let's not forget these guys play football for a reason. It's their passion. They love watching football. So if Hearts have got a week off and they don't play until the Saturday, and you know, McKinnon has been on TNT Sport during Rangers games, you know, doing the punditry. You know, if these guys love football, and you know, it's obviously a bit different for a manager. You know, they need to be careful what they do. But for the player, you know, if he's got a free week, he's got a day off, and he wants to go and watch a game of football, I think they're more than entitled to do that. Obviously, coming with that, Shankland will know that does come rumours and that does come. You know, he's going to get pictured and he's going to be seen at a game. But you know, that boy loves football, and I don't know where his affiliations lie. By the way, obviously, I don't know Shankland. But you know, if he wants to go and watch a Rangers game, honestly, I don't see what the problem is. Apart from obviously rumours being created.
Okay, let's move on to the last game, and I've left this game till last, Ethan, because I don't think, same as the Motherwell and Hearts game, I don't think there was anything to kind of write home about, and it's very interesting, Robbie, because Ethan, because obviously when we've mentioned it, when St Mirren beat Celtic or Rangers, or St Johnstone beat Celtic, it's like, yeah, it's quite good, but and St Johnstone done well that last week, but it's what they do after that game. It's all like beating Celtic 1 week and then next week going away to Dundee United and getting beat 1-0. Saying that, good 3 points for Dundee United. It puts them into a very strong position. And by the way, Robbie, Jim Goodwin was asking for you. I was speaking to him this morning on the phone as well. I'll set up a wee date for you and him at McDonald's somewhere. But I'll tell you after the show. But it's very interesting, even because we've seen that before. Mounds of time that teams beat the old firm, and then the next game they get beat themselves.
Yeah, I think St Johnstone definitely would have been looking to build on the result, and the form has been pretty decent as of late. I mean, before this round of matches, St Johnstone had only picked up one less point than Celtic across the last 6, or something like that. So shows that although they're all completely opposite ends of the league, St Johnstone are in a not the worst run, but Tannadice has obviously been a difficult place for all the teams to go this season. But a good win for Dundee United to grind it out. Adebayiga with a goal from the corner, I think it was, and Jack Walton got man of the match on my app. He got the highest rating. So shows that St Johnstone forced them into some work, but another good win for Dundee United, who keep going under Jim Goodwin. They've been consistent throughout the season, and the Dundee United fans must be delighted with what he's done, getting them promoted, not just getting them steady in the league, but pushing those European spots, and they still have a chance to automatically qualify for European group football if they can nick third. That means they won't have to go through what happened in the Netherlands a couple of seasons ago, because that was a horrific experience for all Scottish football fans, I think, maybe apart from Dundee fans, but for St Johnstone it's poor, but the games will only get on paper easier from here in the bottom half, and you know that they are at the bottom and they have been at the bottom for a while, but I like what Valakari's trying to do. I think they have a chance. It's going to be difficult for them because they obviously start below every other team by 5 points, but I think there's definitely points for St Johnstone to win there. And I think even if they do go down, I'd be confident in Valakari's style of football in the Championship. I'd really like to see how that would play out, because he's used to playing with players that are the best in the league. And if that is what he's got at St Johnstone, what he should have, then he should be able to do a lot better in the Championship and get them back up.
Robbie, we'll touch upon Dundee United in a minute, but I mean, we were talking about Barry Ferguson very passionate about the game early on. One man, Ethan mentioned about Valakari. I don't know if you guys listen to him every week when he does his press conference. He's very passionate about the game, and he loves the game, and he's confident in his beliefs about St Johnstone. But I thought he played a very clever game last week going into the Celtic game, because at his press conference he said, we're up against it. Celtic will come here and get all 3 points, and the rest is history, as to say, Robbie.
Valakari's a breath of fresh air in Scottish football. You know, I think it's more specifically for the Johnston fans. I know where they are, but you can spot on. I mean, I think I'm more excited to see St Johnston in the Championship if they go down. I think that's an exciting prospect under Valakari. But you're right, he's such a breath of air in Scottish football. He's so positive. He always smiles. You know, he's never down about things. He always tries to look on the positives of games. It's nice to see. You know, Alistair would tell you St Johnstone have been through some rough managers. You know, obviously Craig Levine's the main one that springs to mind. So St Johnstone fans will just be happy that they've got a team that, yes, the quality, you know, it could always be improved on, but they've got a team there that really tries that, and that's all they care about. They've got a team that plays nice football, and you know they always try to be positive. It's really nice to see. Saying that, as Ethan said, they're in for a bit of a struggle. Obviously, the good thing for St Johnstone is they've got a free hit at a Scottish Cup semi-final, which, you know, any of the fans would have took at the start of the season. It's a trip to Hampden. So they'll be looking forward to that. But Michael, your point about Valakari, sorry, is interesting. I know what he said before the Celtic game, and even after the Livingston game and after the draw happened, they were speaking on BBC with Tolo and stuff, and I think it was said something like, you know, this is a free hit for us going to Hampden. He's really smart in his words, you know. He's not trying to big up his team and try to say, oh, we'll go and, you know, we know we've got a chance if we play to the best of our abilities. Straight up, he goes, you know, we know it's going to be difficult, but inside he'll be known, I'm saying that, but I know we've got a chance here. You know, he's already shown he can do it. So he's really smart with his words. I think the way he speaks is brilliant. I think he's great on Scottish football, and I hope if St Johnstone go down the board, keep him. I'm pretty confident they would, but you just never know with Scottish football.
By the way, I know you guys went on at the beginning of the season, and we've thanked Ethan for a big 5-figure number because he was worth millions of money, Robbie, as well. But I was, I know if this will happen, I will happily not be on the show that night, because I was the only one on the show that tipped St Johnstone to stay up. My favourite, well, Ross Kinty could go down, because I don't know, there's something about Valakari, and I think it all goes back to that Scottish Cup game where Motherwell beat where St Johnstone done the double over Motherwell on the cup in the league as well. But Ethan, I wanted to talk to you about obviously we've been talking about the manager of the year, the player of the year, the last few weeks in the show. One man that hasn't been mentioned, and Robbie might love me or hate me for saying this, is Jim Goodwin, because I mean, it's always interesting when the team comes up what they're going to do. But I mean, he's overestimated in terms of getting them in the top 6. You know, maybe qualify for European football as well.
Yeah, I know. A brilliant from Goodwin. I think he could be on the short list because it's really not easy to take care. I mean, look at the likes of, I know it's not the same, but the Premier League, how difficult it is for the promoted teams to keep their place in the English Premier League, and the Scottish League's obviously different. But I mean, he's not just stayed in the league; he's got them comfortable in the league, and they're charging towards European football now. And got some really good players as well, some really good pickups. Walton, the goalkeeper, on loan. Dalby as well, one of the top scorers in the league. Ferry's a really good player as well. Stevenson, I think, has been good as well. Adebayoga, I think they've got a really good, solid Scottish Premiership core of players, mixed with the experience and the youth. Not many youth. Well, they do have a few players they brought through, but the sort of younger players I was meaning. But yeah, I think Dundee United, it's a really great season for them. And I think he's definitely in with a chance. But as I said, I think if Celtic win the treble, I think that achievement shouldn't be disrespected, because it's still a pretty remarkable achievement, even though Celtic should win every game in Scotland, because they are financially the strongest team, but it doesn't always play out that way, as we know. So yeah, but yeah, a good win for Dundee United. Yeah, that's all I've got to say on that
Yep.
one.
When doing predictions, I did put Dundee United sixth in my pre-season predictions. I did, you're right, Ethan, they have a very experienced squad. I looked at, the championship wasn't pretty. Goodwin knew that. He spoke about that multiple times. It was a struggle to get up, but once he was up, he could really build that team. I don't think anybody expected Sam Dalby to maybe have the season he's, had. Obviously, he's dropped off a tad bit in the last few weeks, but he's still a really, really good player. They've got a really good squad, Dundee United. Michael, I know obviously there's a running joke, I don't like Goodwin and this and that, but I can respect Goodwin. He's done a really, really good job at Dundee United. He's over exceeded any expectation. I remember he'd done an interview at the start of the season where, his main goal was to stay up, and I think a lot of people did write him off, to maybe go straight back down or be in a relegation battle. So to push past that and be up in the top six, it's an amazing achievement. And I think Goodwin's, I think he's found that team that, he's in for the long haul. I always felt it was going to be that way us. It wasn't. Obviously, I took Aberdeen, and I'll never discredit him for that. I think that was a great opportunity. Obviously, it didn't work, but to find your feet again in the Championship, build your way up, win the league, and then come up and be straight in top six. I mean, it's a good story for Goodwin. And the folk players as well, Glenn Middleton, Trapanovsky. I really like Lucas Stevenson. I think he's a great player. Saying that, there's players that can definitely be improved on. I think the general consensus is someone like a Declan Gallagher maybe needs to be looked to move on at the end of the season. I know they're already looking at moving Tony Watt on. I think that's been publicly announced that he will be leaving. So, but Goodwin's got a plan, and it's not just Goodwin. I think the whole coaching staff at Dundee United is good. I know Lee Sharp was our assistant manager as well. He's a very, very knowledgeable guy. He knows his stuff. So it's all gone well for Dundee United. It'll be interesting to see them back in Europe. Obviously, there has been a few bad results, especially for Dundee United in Europe, but they'll be looking to hopefully push on with Goodwin in charge, because I think he could be there for the long haul.
Even I know the season's not finished yet, but I mean, if you look across the league, there's some interesting stories to talk about. Rangers sacking Clement, Brendan Rodgers, maybe on for the treble as well. Derek McInnes has come out. Wheels just came off the bus, maybe same as Tony Docherty as well. Aberdeen's had a weird season, albeit a one more game away for the season. Hibs, David Gray, manager of the year, could be up there. Hearts are failing yet, albeit again one more game away for the final as well. So it's going to be interesting from now until the end of the season.
Yeah, I think the main sort of interesting points to sort of the still to come is who's going to get third between. I'm going to say between those three. I'm not going to include St Mirren, unfortunately. I think St Mirren can maybe make a push for a European place, possibly. I know it'll be difficult, but Hibs, Dundee United, or Aberdeen, because I think Hibs are the favourites with the momentum, the run they've been on. All their players are chipping in with goals. Bowing, Dwight Gale off the bench, Mark Boyles. I think one more assist away, and he'll have his career high in goals and assists in a season in the top flight. So that shows how well he's done this season. We didn't even mention him on that sort of season conversation. And the other one is who's going to go down, because although St Johnstone are 5 points adrift of the rest, I think they still have maybe something to say.
I think that win against Celtic even was a big win.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've seen Valkyrie after the game in front of the one stand that did have St Johnstone fans. It seemed like a big moment. I know they went on to lose at Tannadice, but that's not the games he's going to be judged off now. He's going to be judged off the one against Hearts, Motherwell, Kilmarnock, Ross County and Dundee. and if he can pick up enough points, maybe go on an unexpected winning run. And you never know. And I think St John's had a great January window as well. Some of the defensive reinforcements they brought in were pretty good. And I think, that'll be the main sort of interesting point. And then we've obviously got the relegation playoff as well. I imagine it's going to be Ayr or Livingston that'll be in the final. But you never know. It might be Partick Thistle, or it might be, is it Raith Rovers that are closest to Thistle?
Yeah.
Or it might be if Falkirk somehow were to throw away, which I don't think they will now. That's really interesting. Shame we've not got a sort of title race on, but hopefully we can have one next season. But I think the league's been pretty good this season. We've had some really entertaining games as well. I'm looking forward to the split, which splits opinion, no pun intended. I like the split, and I like the league and the amount of teams it has at the moment. Maybe I'd increase it a little bit, but I definitely wouldn't be shrinking it to 10 teams. I know there was talk of that.
There you go. We've run out of time today, but just to round up some other sporting news for you, especially in the women's game. Scotland went down to Italy in the women's rugby. Final score, Scotland 17, Italy 25, and over to the football there. It is, Glenn will be happy about this one. Early on, it finished Hibs 1, Hearts 2 in the women's SWPL. Hibs 1, Hearts 2. Glasgow City 4, Motherwell 0, and at half-time in the Glasgow derby, Ethan won't be happy about this, because it is Rangers 1, Celtic 0 and half-time there. Of course, busy end to the season, and we'll be here every step of the way, beginning on Thursday night with Rangers in Europe, and next weekend with the Scottish Cup semi-final specials as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all your comments. Thanks to Ethan, Robbie for keeping me company. There you go, Robbie. Somebody's at your door. You better answer that. I think it's Jim Goodwin. We'll see you soon here on the Rock Room. Thanks for watching.
The Locker Room, with all the sports news you need. Live